What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. James here from jamesdforsyth.com. Doing kind of more of a explicit review of Central Banking 101 by Joseph Wang. Talked a little bit about it a couple nights ago, but just doing more of a general review. It's an amazing starter book for one, especially like if you have no idea about what exactly goes into the monetary system, and knowing just like how many different ways and how many different entities are a part of it, right? Especially nowadays with like shadow banking and the eurodollar system and stuff like that. It's not like an in-depth analysis of everything. It's only like 220 something pages, so not really the whole point, but it does do a very good job, I think, of doing a general overview of the whole thing, so you can really see it. For examples, like some of the things that it talks about, just kind of breezing through the table of contents, is like the different types of money. I've done a few different videos on this already, specifically with the videos on a central bank digital currency. And so there's that. It goes through the actual bank reserves, it goes through bank deposits, how treasuries are used, fiat currencies and other stuff. It goes through who actually creates the money, which I thought was interesting because everyone knows, or everyone believes the Fed. And then there's also commercial banks as well, and I've talked about that to a certain extent. But also, this part was new for me, the Treasury, and he explains how kind of treasuries are essentially used as a form of money, as mostly for larger financial institutions, to where holding like other forms of bank liabilities, whether from a commercial or a central bank, is no longer really advantageous for them, right? Because we're talking like money market funds, sovereign wealth funds, that kind of extent, right? So there's that. It goes into shadow banking. So the shadow banks, and this was one of the areas that I was really fuzzy on, because it was always like I knew what it was, like the whole idea of the shadow banking system, but I didn't know, like, okay, what are shadow banks? Like, what? I don't understand what this is. And so basically it explains that, the primary dealers, like the primary dealer banks that do like that exchange and trade treasuries, basically finding buyers and sellers. They kind of work as a market maker, from my understanding, for treasuries for both commercial banks and central banks and so on, right? Also money market funds, money market mutual funds, technically, ETFs, so exchange traded funds, mortgage REITs, private investment funds, and then like securitization firms, right? So there's that as well. And then there's the eurodollar market, goes into a bit of offshore dollar banking, which is essentially the eurodollar market, talking about basically dollars on a global scale. There's that part of it. He makes he distinguishes between like the different types of markets. So like, what are money markets, what are equity markets, and what are the difference, what matters, and so on. And then really goes into Fed watching, right? Which really kind of opened my eyes to what this, basically the whole channel was at this point, because it was one of those, I started this in the videos, and the topic specific to each video is really just kind of what I find of interest, and really trying to just kind of provide value for what interests me and bringing you guys along with that as I go through the different like research papers and stuff. But it's really kind of Fed watching in a way. And I didn't know this, but because I don't watch like mainstream news or anything, specifically financial news, because a lot of it I'm like, that's not quite how it works. And also I work so much, I don't really have time to watch the news per se. I get it from more what I believe are trustworthy sources, because I've been watching them for a while, for quite some time, sometimes even multiple years, and they've pretty much always panned out to be more or less correct in some form or fashion, or at least it's more honest. And it actually, the whole purpose of these specific sources are to really educate and better understand the same purpose of this, right? This channel and the website and everything. And mostly I'm talking about like other content creators and stuff like that. But on those kind of mainstream media sources, I guess you could say, there's actually like professional Fed watchers sometimes, and I think a lot of the times they're also hired from like investment firms and stuff to basically do that professionally and guess what the Fed is doing. One of the things that I thought was really good with this book specifically is he has sections on pieces of reform. So like, and they're kind of faded in the background, so it's easy to see. So like one of them I just flipped to is how the Fed bails out shadow banks, and then it's literally like looks like 3 pages of just like explaining exactly that topic. And he has quite a few of them. See if I can find another one. We have how to analyze Fed reserves, and he actually has like screenshots of like the Federal Reserve balance sheet. And then also when he's explaining topics like how, say, like money moves through the shadow banking system and stuff, he actually draws out, or not draws, but he has examples of actual balance sheets. And so basically the reason it took me so long to, or not so long, but it took me longer to get through the book, even though it's relatively short, is because I was literally sitting there, it's like, okay, there's the loan, these bank reserves go to this balance sheet, and then this happens over here, and like literally following the money through the various balance sheets as you explain through the process, right? And that's really how I kind of synthesize the information. It's like literally, okay, slow down, step by step, walk through examples, figure it out, go, right? And that's 100% helpful, at least on my end. Like, this is a book that, I mean, as soon as I finish 2 other ones that I have, I plan on reading this one again, because it is so like fundamental on everything. I think the only thing that like was in here that I wouldn't have understood beforehand would have been the when he references the LIBOR rates, but I understand that because that part wasn't a problem for me, is because I literally just finished writing an 8-page blog post for the website. It isn't up yet as of right now, since I'm out of town and I don't really have consistent Wi-Fi access. I haven't had time to put it on the website yet, do that part yet, so that's not up yet. But I went through a lot of the primary sources for both the ICE and other LIBOR related things. So that should be helpful at least. Another one, a section that I just opened up to, was the dollar as a weapon of mass destruction, and it goes into the eurodollar market and stuff like that for a few pages. One of the things I like, especially with these kind of books, and I talked about it a little bit with my review of The Creature from Jekyll Island, is the sources. Like, I love when they actually put legitimate, like, academic sources in the footnotes, like actually cite things correctly, where you have like professional articles and stuff like that. It's not just like, hey, here's a link. It's like, okay, cool. I mean, like, and I try to do that. It depends on what it's a link to. So like a lot of the times, if it's an actual like article, I'll cite it professionally and then also put the link in there, just for easy access. But if it's just like some random news article, it's like you just kind of go. But he has like 80 something citations in here, I think. I don't know, I lost the first footnote. I'm looking at 80 right now and going to the last page. It looks like exactly 80. But yeah, there's definitely a bunch of references in there that are helpful and for information that you can go on and other things. He also gives a different viewpoint of things, because he was one of the traders on the open market operations desk, so the desk for the Fed, and so he has that insider knowledge of like how this works. And he explains, especially in his Fed watching section, on what exactly matters, like where is all the thought going to for the process and the publications for the Federal Reserve. And he gives a chart at some point talking about like the priority you should give certain things. see if I can get to it. Yeah, right there. So Fed communication and importance, and he ranks it like high to low, right? So like the FOMC statement, the press conference, the minutes, and the dot plots, he ranks as high of importance because it goes into a lot more thought, and like each word is meticulously chosen for a reason, and that's the whole point of why it's high on there. And then he goes into more like the research and the surveys are low in importance because it's just kind of not as meticulously put together. It's not for a very specific tailored purpose per se. But yeah, definitely recommend this book. It has helped significantly in me kind of understanding a lot of the other stuff that I've been going through, and just really kind of synthesizing it to the point to where I can understand how things are connecting with one another. Even whereas beforehand it was kind of just like, okay, here's kind of shadow banking, here's the eurodollar market, I don't really get how it connects just yet. Just like, okay, just kind of look at it and tilt your head or whatever. But now it's more of like, okay, I see where these are connecting, and you can kind of follow it much better. Again, highly recommend the book. I'm going to read this multiple times, and it's not that big. Like, you could probably sit down and read this in a day, on a day off or whatever, if you really wanted to. Especially if you're just reading it and not going through and making notes like I do. That's why it takes me so long to go through books, is because I highlight like crazy, and then I'll write notes in the margin and stuff like that as I think things through. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that. So I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one.